The iconic music scene of June 1965 is impossible to find today. In June 1965, the modern world is emerging before our very eyes. It's an exciting time as we witness the first American to walk in space, while the fashion scene is drawing inspiration from the space race. Music is a mix of both wholesome pop, R&B and blues rock, with the emergence of new subgenres. Concepts and potent images are being introduced into lyrics that paint pictures of surrealism, impressionism, as well as straight-to-the-point sexual frustration. But there's also a social criticism taking root of contemporary society, which some consider to be superficial. All that combined with new jingly jangly sound that rattles onto the radio waves. From swinging London to the hills of Laurel Canyon, June 1965 is an iconic time in music, and the changes in society are starting to become apparent.
I'm a loser.
I beg your pardon, sir?
I'm a loser.
Oh, I don't know about that.
And I'm not what I appear to be. 10-10 wins New York.
The bright, exciting sound of 10-10 wins New York spotlights the Rolling Stones, and this is the last time.
You're heading out to the movies with a date on a warm evening in June 1965. You turn on the radio to hear the Beach Boys playing Help Me Rhonda. You change the station and find Sam the Sham playing the Woolly Bully. Next, you switch to the Four Tops playing I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. And which movies do you have to choose from? You could see Elvis starring Tickle Me. He plays a singing rodeo rider, hired at an expensive all-women dude ranch and beauty spa. That sounds right up his alley. You can also go see Elizabeth Taylor starring The Sandpiper, about a free-spirited single mother who forms a connection with the wedded headmaster of an Episcopalian boarding school in Monterey, California. But if romance movies are not your thing, how about some mystery humour with the Pink Panther series Pink Ice? The iconic theme song by Henry Mancini is solid gold. Or, if you're into independent films, you could catch Edie Sedgwick starring Poor Little Rich Girl, directed by Andy Warhol. Spend the day with a young rich girl who is jobless and stays in bed, reads, talks on the phone, smokes cigarettes, makes fresh coffee and tries on some clothes from a large wardrobe. Is this 1965 or 2024? Minus the reading, this sounds like a modern-day reality show. The legendary Cambridge debate that included writers and provocateurs James Baldwin and William Buckley Jr. airs in the US. The opinions being debated then are still being argued today. The obvious question is, would this debate even be able to happen today? Of course, hardships, civil rights and anti-war sentiments will become a central theme of the music scene right around the corner. Folk music was already focusing on these topics.
But nobody is playing this group in the country, and it has such a sound. It's just a group that we've just sort of discovered right here and sort of taken to our hearts. They're called Them. Isn't that weird? An English group called Them. I see there, Them, cheerio, cha-cha, and all that stuff there. And the song has got that beat. It could very well be a great hit. It's called Baby, Please Don't Go. From England, Them, for the second time on the Weird Beard program, the first time in this part of the world.
In addition to his movie, Elvis also has a song on the charts, Crying in the Chapel. The American R&B music on the charts included the Supremes with Back in My Arms Again, Marvin Gaye's I'll Be Doggone, and Otis Redding's classic, Since I've Been Loving You. Some of the British Invasion songs being played in record stores, on the radio and on musical variety shows in June 1965 are the Yardbirds for Your Love, the Beatles' Ticket to Ride, Herman's Hermits, Wonderful World, and Chad and Jeremy's Before and After. John Lennon's second book, A Spaniard in the Works, is published. The book consists of nonsensical stories and drawings similar to the style of his 1964 book, In His Own Right. The name is a pun on the expression a spanner in the works. Professor of English Ian Marshall describes Lennon's prose as mad wordplay, noting Lewis Carroll's influence on his writing style, and suggesting the book anticipates the lyrics of Lennon's later songs. Fashions being displayed in shop windows often include bright colours and bold patterns. The fashion scene is incorporating space race-inspired styles, like the ones seen here. The women's fashion must-have of the moment are white go-go boots. At least you'll be ready for a moonwalk should NASA call last minute. The fun pop art patterns seem to take dresses and their models to another dimension. It is a time of great experimentation in both music and fashion. Boutiques fill Carnaby Street with the latest mod styles as well as other popular looks of the day while blasting pop music. Women are beginning to play with their hemline length, however most are still wearing it around the knee. The space race between America and the USSR is in full swing. Back in March, the USSR had the first spacewalk by Alexei Leonov. Not to be outdone, on June 3rd, the first US spacewalk was made by NASA astronaut Ed White during the Gemini 4 mission, and was 23 minutes in duration. Then on June 8th, the USSR launches Luna 6. It missed the moon by 99,000 miles. The Record Mirror features Mick Jagger on the cover and discusses the Rolling Stones EP, Everybody Needs Somebody. They describe it, certainly something extremely avant-garde, for a band of this status to bring out in lieu of a single which is said to be delayed. However, Stones fans won't be disappointed. Since the publication was already written and published on June 5th, they had not yet had a chance to hear the new single that the Rolling Stones released just the day before on June 4th. The song that will come to define the band, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. The riff is widely considered one of the greatest hooks of all time. The song's lyrics refer to sexual frustration and a jab at commercialism. The lyrics to this were truly threatening to an older audience. This song was perceived as an attack on the status quo. Jagger later commented on the song's appeal. It was a song that really made the Rolling Stones. Changed us from just another band into a huge monster band. It has a very catchy title. It has a very catchy guitar riff. It has a great guitar sound, which was original at the time. And it captures the spirit of the times, which is very important in those kind of songs, which was alienation. The Record Mirror interviews Cliff Richard, who discusses the music scene. Today's pop scene is far more vibrant than it was when I came into the business about 6 years ago. The Shadows and I were talking about this last night, and we all agreed that performers seem to start off at a far higher musical standard than they used to. They seem to know much more about music, fabulous chords and so on. Of course, the scene is a lot bigger, and there's a big bandwagon thing rolling. Everybody takes everybody else's ideas fast. That musical knowledge seems to be lacking in today's music market, as very few musicians even play their own instruments on their records, if at all. When Cliff is asked about Elvis having a resurgence of popularity, he sounds doubtful, stating, "I used to think he's a rock star and he can act too. But recent films haven't come up to what I expect of him. Somehow he doesn't manage to get good material, unlike the Beatles, who can write such good songs for themselves. If only Elvis could get hold of songs of that standard." Ouch. The Yardbirds and the Beatles perform a concert together June 20th, 1965 in Paris.
It's been a hard day's night.
The Seekers begin a feud with their record company, Decca, who released an older song they disapproved of, Chilly Winds. Their publicist argues, "These tracks are made almost 2 years ago in Australia and are not representative of the Seekers today." Decca responds, "We've got a record legitimately made by the Seekers and legitimately obtained. We think it's a very good record and very much the Seekers." The song only made it to 122 on the US charts. In their defence, it sounds more 1963 folk harmonies than 1965. Another feature in the Record Mirror is on the Spencer Davis Group, who reacts to the heat Bob Dylan is getting over playing an electric guitar on Subterranean Homesick Blues. Davis said when trying out new material, he plugged in a guitar and tried it out. The audience responded. They said I was deserting them, but they always do, don't they? He then formed the group with 15-year-old Steve Winwood, whose voice had not yet broken and could hit ridiculously high notes.
I walk that walk, that talk.
Jackie Del Shannon is moving up the charts with What the World Needs Now Is Love. The Guess Who continues to climb with Shaking All Over, and Donovan's hit Catch the Wind is quickly heading towards the top. In the UK, you can head over to the Marquee Club to catch the Yardbirds, the Settlers, the Spencer Davis Group and the Who's perform. In the UK, you might tune into Thank Your Lucky Stars, where you could catch the following performances. The Rolling Stones, I'm Alright, I'm Moving On, Route 66. The Kinks, Set Me Free. Lulu, Leave a Little Love. And on Ready Steady Go, you can see performances by the Kinks, Set Me Free. The Yardbirds, Heart Full of Soul. The Rolling Stones, The Last Time and Play With Fire. The Animals, We Gotta Get Out of This Place. Donovan, Colours. And the Hollies with I'm Alive. BBC's influential Saturday Club, which aired in Britain on Saturday mornings playing pop songs, featured performances by them playing Gloria and Here Comes the Night. On June 7th, Sony Corp introduces its home video tape recorder, priced at $995. When adjusted for inflation, $997 in 1965 equals $9,802 in 2024. On that same day, the Supreme Court of the United States decides on the case Griswold versus Connecticut, effectively legalising the use of contraception by married couples. But the big headline of June 1965 was Queen Elizabeth's birthday honours that listed the Beatles as members of the most excellent order of the British Empire. Dozens of past winners are shocked. The honour surprised the Beatles, but it outraged some members of the public. People were sharply divided on whether the Beatles deserved the award. Former MBE recipients didn't know what to make of it either. Some were so upset that they sent their MBEs back in disgust. Ultimately, the public outcry only made the band want to accept the MBEs. We'd nothing to lose, except that bit of you which said you didn't believe in it. The Beatles said. We agreed in order to annoy even more the people who were annoyed. Coincidentally, John Lennon takes a page of their book of outrage and returns his MBE just 4 years later, citing political reasons. His letter states, Your Majesty, I'm returning my MBE as a protest against Britain's involvement in the Nigeria-Biafra thing, against our support of America in Vietnam, and against cold turkey slipping down the charts. With love, John Lennon of Bag. One of the first albums to come out of the Laurel Canyon scene was The Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man, which was released in June 1965. The Byrds' signature sound of Roger McGuinn's 12-string Rickenbacker guitar provides a jingle-jangle sound set against the backdrop of the band's complex harmony singing. The album mostly consists of cover versions of folk songs, primarily composed by Bob Dylan, and originals written or co-written by singer Gene Clark. Mr. Tambourine Man is widely regarded by critics as representing the first effective American challenge to the chart dominance of the Beatles and other British invasion bands in 1965. The album was also influential in popularising the music subgenre known as folk rock. Dylan's surreal lyrics on Tambourine Man, specifically Take Me on a Trip Upon Your Magic Swirling Ship, and The Smoke Rings of My Mind, created much speculation about their meaning. The journey for transcendence from some unknown source is at the heart of the matter. Mr. Tambourine sounds like nothing else in 1965 and will be a huge inspiration on the changing music scene. That's it for June 1965. I hope you enjoyed this trip down music history lane, exploring the iconic music scene and other fun and interesting ways in which we used to live as a society, when the music scene was dynamic and exploding. How does it stack up against today's music scene? Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Please leave a comment below. Be sure to check the earlier iconic music of 1965 in these videos.
The Grand Slammer and Sound, Radio 77, Babalu and the Flying Discotheque. We're right over... Ooh, it's Jones Beach. Look down there, will you? It's a young fella talking to a gal's mother there. Is it Mrs. Love? You got a brownie daughter, and when she grows up, she'll be a Girl Scout.
Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter.